Okay, welcome to the Investigative Journal on this January 25th, 2016 day on our calendar. I'm your host, Greg Anthony, on this Monday. You're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com. My show is played every evening from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. That's Pacific time, and also at 11 a.m. Pacific time. So try to catch either one of those times. If not, go to my website at arcticbeacon.com. Today's a second part series, second part of a show I'm doing regarding our communication with animals. And is it possible to communicate with them on their terms, not on ours? And can that communication, which could be considered telepathic, help us communicate amongst ourselves in a better way? Now, most people are skeptical when you say that you can communicate with an animal and then try to translate it to somebody else in our language. And let me tell you, though, that throughout my life, I've had certain experiences when I was a young boy, and then a couple during the time when I was older. And like I said on this show the other day, I made a lot of mistakes in training horses and things, getting into the hectic life of trying to make money, trying to get them ready for races, not really thinking in terms of really communicating with them, but more or less trying to get them to do something. But there were times when, even when your mind quiets down, when things get a little bit more relaxed, and a lot of times that happens when you're sitting in a barn and I remember some of the things I used to love, just listening to horses eat. And it would calm me down so much. I mean, I'd have a barn full of horses and you're getting their food ready and all of their supplements and all of the hay and all of that stuff. And that crunching and that munching and that contentment passes through you. Now, I remember one time, I told you the other time that one of these telepathic experiences I had with animals, actually where I knew that what they were really trying to tell me without words, came when I was younger. Now, it did happen to me a few times, and I'm going to give you one time that it happened to me, and I know what this horse said to me. Now, most people at this point will say, Greg, you are really, do you really believe that? Well, yes, I do. Because in a sense, think about this. If you believe something like this, and if something happens, who are you to say it didn't? Just like me, if I said, for example, how many people say to a person who says that they have such a strong faith in God, they know He exists, they communicate with Him, and then they go, oh, that's impossible. Now, is that fair? No. Well, just hear me out. Well, I was in Boise, Idaho at the time. I owned a newspaper in a nearby town, and I wanted to get back into racing and being around horses, more or less getting a chance to ride them early in the morning like I did when I was a kid. And so, in Boise, it's a smaller track, and you meet a lot of down-home good people, and they come these sellers from California with broken down horses. In a sense, they broke down in their 2-year-old year, and now they're coming on to their 3-year-old year. Maybe they had a problem, and so they bring in a bunch of them, and they're up for sale, very reasonably priced. So I said, I think I'm going to get one. And I want to spend some time with animals, away from the newspaper office, constantly thinking, constantly writing, constantly talking. And so I walked through the barn, and there were about 7 or 8 horses to pick from. And I asked if I could just go in by myself, and I spent time with each one of them, a few seconds, a few minutes. And I came to about the 4th stall, and I walked in, and I looked at this horse, and I looked at her, and she was a plump little thing. Nothing that told me her body. I was concerned about their legs, and I was looking. But I looked her in the eye, and she told me, I'm a winner. I swear to God, that's what I got out of that little meeting. It's never happened to me before. and it hasn't happened again. And guess what? I walked out, bought the horse, started training her, and she turned out to be a winner. And I don't mean just a, this was years ago when I was younger. She was a winner, and she didn't lie to me. All she needed was somebody to take care of her. And that's what happened. And so instead of getting in a long, involved story of all of her winnings and all this kind of stuff and who she was, just trust me, she won a number of races. And it was really important because the rest of my horses didn't win anything. And in fact, she paid for everything. But anyway, it does happen. The question of how we communicate with them. We don't communicate with them through words. Oh, of course, they hear our signals. They try to do that. They hear us. But in a sense, to realize they have a different sense about them. The smell, their innate ability to understand how you're thinking, what you're feeling through you. It's amazing what animals can do. And so to try and communicate with them, that's what we're talking about today. Can it be done? Yes. But then the question becomes, can we telepathically communicate with our human beings, friends? And that begins a more difficult discussion, and it is quite difficult. I'm not saying, and I got a couple emails saying, Greg, are you saying nobody should talk? You're the biggest talker I know. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that through communicating in a different way with animals and allowing yourself to slow down, it could help us to really understand human beings better so that you can relate, you can rely on some of those instincts, some of the heartfelt feelings that you have, the telepathic ideas. When a politician says something, you don't have to go and research it. You know he's lying. And that's the end of the story. But what I'm getting at here is, can that ability to communicate in a telepathic manner with animals help you to communicate with human beings? I think it can. Now, can we communicate telepathically with humans? Of course, but it usually happens with emotional ties, people that you have emotional ties to for a long period of time, husband and wife who've been together 40 years. They seem to be sitting on, their chairs, eating dinner, and they know exactly what they're thinking without saying a word. That's common. And I guess it isn't so bad as the years go on that couples don't talk as much. They realize they don't need to. And in a sense, that could be a very loving thing, not something that is looked upon as, oh, you got to communicate with talking all the time. But what I'm getting at, yes, when you have individuals that are closely connected, that type of telepathic communication is easy. But let's say you want to communicate with a stranger way across the planet, way across in another part of the world. How does that work? I think it's quite difficult because there has to be a communication, then a reception, a receiver and a giver, and it has to go back and forth. I guess you could test it out by asking somebody to work with you on this, but it becomes more difficult. So I'm not saying don't talk to people. I'm just saying by using these skills that our ancestors used, more of their senses, more of understanding things through their heart, not so much through their mind. And the reason they had a better chance at it is the world wasn't so confusing. When you clog your head with all these things, it's very difficult to communicate in any other way. In fact, it blocks any type of communication you may have with an animal. And I think if we think about it, if we didn't lose those things, maybe we wouldn't have lost the buffalo herds. Maybe we would have more been in tune with them so we didn't just destroy them for no reason. Maybe we would be the same way with some of the tropical forests. Maybe we'd be the same way with fracking and not going down and digging our earth up so that we're creating all this havoc, and we're talking about all those, that big huge story and that methane leak and all these things that we're doing to the environment. If we had a more in tune connection with it, maybe all these things wouldn't occur. It's just a thought. But anyway, let's go back to, I played, maybe 21 minutes of Anna Breitenbach from South Africa. And she is basically an interaction. She studies this 24/7 on how to communicate with animals, telepathic communication, and how to better train yourself to do this, and that's really what you have to do. It's nothing supernatural. Somebody who speaks with God doesn't have to be a supernatural person. Somebody who speaks with an animal doesn't have to be supernatural. Everybody has the ability to do it. We've just lost the motive, or not the motive, but we've lost how to do it based on technology and the way we have centered ourselves. Too much thinking, too much talking, and not enough feeling. So let's listen to Anna, because I want to get back to this presentation that goes on for a while, and it's very good. So check it out. Here we go.
How does it work? Every day we have moments of intuition. We have little gut feelings or little hints or sudden messages fall into our head, and we need to learn to trust those. That's really what it's about. And it's about the energy behind the concepts, not the actual words. So sending is automatic. Animals send, we send information, and it's really not about the words. Okay. Us humans tend to hang up on the idea of words, but if we're genuinely in distress and are saying help or ouch or I'm really sore, I'm really unhappy, animals understand the feeling and the energy of it. It doesn't matter what we're actually saying. Luckily, they don't interpret things from a language point of view. And as they say, cats are their own particular species who may not actually talk and definitely are less likely to respond when we want them to. So we need to honor the animals and their species as well. There are simple steps, we'll talk more about this afterwards, but they're very simple steps to intentionally connecting with an animal telepathically or with a plant telepathically. They're very, very simple. So simple that we tend to think, well, they can't be real, or this is too easy. But it's really not a complicated thing. We just have to have our hearts and our minds in the right place. Usually one of the first things to do, therefore, is to relax, to consciously relax. Relaxing the body can help relax the mind, because we need to become still. When our minds are still, we can tap into our deeper knowing, which is the intuition. So being still is very much the first step. Being quiet, not with music or meditation, just being quiet, watching your breathing. And then coming down to being very calm and open, connecting with the heart. It really is about coming down into the wisdom of the heart and to imagine that you're connecting. If you would like, you could have a visualization that imagines you reaching out to connect with the animal. Better to just visualize it than to actually do it, because that might disturb them physically, and that might get your mind all involved in the physical interaction, which it's really not about. It's about being in a quiet space of heart connection. You could imagine reaching out to them, particularly if they're not in the same room as you, because this kind of energy transmission can happen across great distances. The telepathic energy transference is not at all affected by buildings or mountains or distance. You can communicate with a dog in your room or a dog on the other side of the world. But most important is to be quiet. Here at Findhorn, you have very good access to places and practices to instill that. I noticed since my last visit, there's a nice new bright wood sign on the gate to the original garden saying, "Be still and know." And that is really what it's about. If you become still, you know. You know. You don't think about stuff, you just know. And in that space, you can know the moods and the thoughts and the feelings and the states of being of everything around you, from an ant to an elephant, even if they're not around you, from a cauliflower to a tree. It's also about genuinely honoring and having reverence for that other being, not making them smaller than you or less important, but about really respecting them and who they are. And us humans tend to not like some species so much. We tend to have prejudice against things like ticks and mosquitoes. And then because we have a prejudice against ticks, we have a prejudice against the animals who carry ticks, like the deer, and then we don't want them close to us because they might make us sick. And all of these stories and all of these negative thoughts, which only increase our chances of manifesting that very negative thought. If we genuinely understood that, yes, the deer are carrying the ticks and might also become sick from them, we can feel more kindly and understand we're all on the same planet and the same situation. If we understand why animals that raid our vegetable garden are hungry, perhaps, or why they're not getting enough nutrition in the very little wild areas that are left, we might feel more kindly to leaving some rows in our vegetable patch for them, or putting some trees in a different location and saying they're welcome to eat off those. It's about living in harmony with nature, and the most amazing reciprocal relationships are possible. It's also about physical considerations. We need to go quietly and perhaps somewhat camouflaged into nature. One of my favorite animals in Africa is the meerkat. And we can get closer to animals in nature if we are being unobtrusive in the environment, if we're not wearing big bright colors, if we're not talking loudly or thinking loudly, even if our mouths are shut. So it's about having a quiet way of walking and being. It's about being quiet within. That is truly the only requirement for this at all. And when one is quiet within, the most amazing things can happen. I was sitting on a boat in a channel on the coast of South Africa, and I found out afterwards, a white-throated swallow came and sat on the wire, on the stay of the boat, and I wanted to respect his need for a rest, I thought, so I moved away, and he followed me, and I moved around to the other side of the boat, and he followed me, and eventually I communicated with him, and he was just curious, who are you, and what do you feel like? So I offered my hand so he could feel what I felt like, and he hopped onto my hand. And we had a lovely chat about the weather, literally about the weather, because the weather matters to a young swallow trying to fly across a channel. So amazing things can happen when you're genuinely open and peaceful. Had I been trying to have a connection with that sparrow and within myself reaching and grabbing for it, I bet it wouldn't have happened, because I would have been wanting something of that experience. It comes down to shared awareness, beyond words, beyond physical action and beyond behavior. It's about being in a space with an animal, with a plant, with a flower, touching or not, and about being in a state of shared awareness. It doesn't always have to be this huge conversation where there's question and answer to and fro. Just sitting quietly in the presence of another is a beautiful communion, even if it's not a communication. And our dear Dorothy has this lovely transmission from the plant kingdom. And this is truly how I experience it as well. We quietly radiate to you, and it is as if you must stop and listen to us. All of nature, all around us, is constantly radiating and being authentic and expressing who they are. All we have to do is slow down and stop long enough to be still, to hear. And that's the invitation for all of us in our daily lives. Because we are, on a building block level, all parts of the same universe, of exactly the same kinds of parts. We're in this constant flow and motion. So why not enjoy the dance and get to know our dancing partners, every aspect of the plant, animal, mineral, elemental kingdom around us. Okay, down to some nitty-gritty. John mentioned in the beginning the workshops. I'll be back in August facilitating a couple of workshops. The adult ones we call workshops, the kids ones we call fun shops. Sorry for the adults. So from the 3rd to the 5th of August, Saturday to a Monday, and the following week the same again. Those are interspecies communication workshops where we go into a lot of detail about all the how, all the techniques, so-called, for how. But it's very practical, very experiential. We get into real communications, both off photographs of animals that I know and you don't, so that you can test yourselves and have your answers validated. We also go out and about on the property. The first workshop, I believe, will be at the park, and the second at Cluny. So we go and work with real life situations or negotiations between different plant species or plants and animals or animals and humans, and we get very practical with it. There's a lot of individual mentoring as well. So by the end of those 2.5, 3 days, you've absolutely got all that you would ever need to go and continue practicing with. Most of the workshop is really just about how to get out of our own way. So those you can inquire more about at the bookings office. There are still spaces on both of those workshops. And then in addition, on the Tuesday, the 6th of August, for the young children in the mornings and for teens in the afternoon, because there will be a program by then, I'll also be offering a couple of hours. That's free of charge for any children who want to come along. And then we're just going to go and get dirty and play with the animals and the plants and communicate with them out there in the woods and the beach. So all kids are most welcome to that as well. And if you want to know more about my other offerings in the UK, Germany, or elsewhere in the world, my website is animalspirit.org. I also teach online, doing webinars and free seminars about associated topics. It really is my passion and my pleasure to be able to spread this amongst other humans to help us remember Because when we remember our ways of being related, all of life benefits. We benefit the most, I think, but hopefully we can have positive effects on the other beings who share our lives too. And that's just the way it used to be and the way it can be again. So thank you all for being here. What we're going to do is switch right into some video footage. It's just about 12 or 13 minutes long. And this is from a case involving a black leopard in South Africa. This black leopard was born in a Belgian zoo and had never come out of his night shelter there, so the zoo got pretty upset because he wasn't being a good exhibit. He wasn't coming out of his night shelter, which is, a tiny, tiny little area. And so they sold him. They sold him to a breeding farm in South Africa, and then he didn't produce cubs. So then they were upset because he didn't do as they wished. So they sold him on again to a cat park where I came to meet him. By then he was 7 years old. And when he got to the cat park for the first 6 months there, until the day I went to meet him, he also never came out of his night shelter, which is a small concrete enclosure about the size of a double bed. By then he was completely fed up with humans, very angry with people. And they had never intended to try to handle him or touch him directly. He's way too wild and very dangerous. But when the caretaker of the place just tried to put some meat through the fence into his night shelter to make friends with him, this black leopard named Diablo came charging straight through 2 sets of electric fence that were on, broke through the fence, knocked the 6'4" man to the ground, bit on his arm so badly he put him in hospital for a week, and then he went back through the hole in the fence and went back to his night shelter. So that's where the story starts. They were just completely desperate to try to find out what on earth was going on with this animal and why he was so unhappy. So we're going to watch that, and after that we'll take questions and discussion points. Okay.
Okay, so we're going to take a break in 2 minutes and come back to this fantastic, just an unbelievable story about this leopard. And may I say this, that she makes such a great point. The times that at least I had this experience of actually telepathically knowing what the horse was telling me when I was older. Now, I told you about some of the times when I was younger, and it was so easy because your mind is not even cluttered then, and you're not full of everything that you get through crazy education and all this kind of stuff. But the times that it happened to me were always these times when I was very calm, almost in a trance, like when I'd sit in the barn listening to the horses eat, sitting on a bale of hay, just chewing on a piece of straw. And by the way, if anybody out there needs an old broken down horse trainer who knows a lot more now, let me know. I'd enjoy working with more animals. They're sure a lot better than people. And I say that only in jest because there are a lot of great people. But the thing I'm trying to get at is, let's take a break here. And I'm going to come back and tell you a couple other times that I had these experiences. And I had them more with animals than I've had with people. Interesting enough. So let's come back in about 3 minutes, get back to Anna, who's got some great things to say. And I hope you jot down her website and go to it. You may ask why I'm doing this. Hopefully it'll slow us all down and we'll all be able to communicate a little bit better. Because I know the people that listen to my show are they're always into new theories and new things. And I think it's good sometimes to just slow down. Slow down your mind, relax, and really enjoy what God has created for us. That's why we're here. Back in 3 minutes on the Investigative Journal.
The book of Revelation says, the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ. This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy Reality News app. Get it now. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
I know you all want answers, and believe me, so do I, and I'll do my best to get them.
Despite Nicolas Cage's promise to do his best to get left behind rapture answers for us, don't hold your breath. Not everyone believes Left Behind is true prophecy. Some may even regard as conspiratorial the mainstream re-release of the Left Behind movie with actor Nicolas Cage portraying the main character as an attempt to further reinforce in the minds of all this perception of false prophecy in order to condition the masses for the play about to begin. If you want true Bible prophecy answers, get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. The author exposes the Latin rapture origin, the 7-year tribulation deception, true Bible revelation of Daniel's 70 weeks, the abomination of desolation, the restrainer, America in the Revelation, the image of the beast and the mark of the beast, and the truth about God's chosen people, and so much more about Bible prophecy. This book will shatter the Left Behind paradigm of future events. Get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.
Okay, we're back for the second half hour of the Investigative Journal, and this is, it's January 25th, 2016. This is the second half hour. We're talking about interaction with animals, our communication skills with people, etc., etc. And we're going to listen to an incredible story right now of this leopard and Anna talking to this leopard to correct a problem. And you know, I wanted to relate a couple things to you regarding these moments when I was an adult, that I had these experiences where I knew exactly what they were thinking and then put it into my own words so that I could understand it. And I told you about the horse that won a lot of races for me. That told me she would. But there was another horse I had, the most beautiful specimen of being. This gelding must have been 17 hands, and I used to ride him every morning. And boy, he was probably the great. In the morning, he galloped as if he could win the Kentucky Derby, and I had such high hopes on him. And I'd sit there. And I'd always say to people, the best time to be riding is when that sun is coming up, God's sun is coming up, and you hear that the horse breathing, and you're in tune. There's nothing else you're thinking about. There's nothing that matters in life, and you're in tune with every step, and you're feeling what he's telling you. And he's telling you things like, oh, I love running now. I love this time of day. Oh, this is so beautiful. And that's what he used to tell me. And I thought I had a winner. So I'd bring him back to the barn, take care of him, give him his bath. And do you understand, when you work with these animals, that you're bathing them, grooming them, touching them, doing all these things that without thinking, and you're actually communicating a bit. But in my mind, as a trainer, and a rider, I'm always worried about other things, and I was confused and probably didn't give enough time to each horse. So this particular gelding I'd put out in a race, and he'd come in last all the time, about 10 lengths behind every other horse. And I couldn't understand it. And he did this time and time again. I raced him maybe 12 times. And every morning he looked like he'd win the Kentucky Derby, and every afternoon he looked like he didn't really like it. He just liked being in the back, just jogging home. So finally, a couple trainers that I knew started thinking that it was my fault, I was a bad trainer. So they saw the beautiful specimen, and they were starting to inquire, because I said, how much you want to sell this horse for? So I didn't talk about it, but a couple times I was in the barn, and I really sat down one time, and I must have spent 5 hours with this horse after dinner. Sitting there, putting on, turn the music off, just sitting with the horse. I put a bale of hay there. And you can actually, they know you, they trust you at that point, enough to sit with them, and you're not worried about them doing it in a 12 by 12 stall. In fact, he's probably saying, just take me out for a walk. And I would do that sometimes. And I sat there. And in that particular one time, he said, I just don't like running. I just don't like being in competition. I don't like the time of day. It's too hot. I like just being alone in the morning. So I knew my next step was going to be to send him back to a farm, because one of the biggest mistakes that trainers make, especially at a small level, at the higher levels, you got a lot of horses that don't want to be there, and you got to figure that out. So he told me, I don't want to race. But the days go by, and a couple trainers came by and said, we got a guy who wants to buy the horse. And I said, well, I'm sending him back to the farm. He's not a racehorse. And they said, no, I've got some good money. And I said, well, what are you talking about? So they told me the price, and I had to go to the owner. And I said to the trainer, listen, don't buy this horse for anybody. He told me he doesn't like racing, and he laughed me in the face. He laughed at me. What do you mean he told you? I said, yeah, he just doesn't like racing. He wants to, either you want to ride him as a pony horse in the morning, when the sun comes up, he'll be the best horse, but he just doesn't like it. So anyway, I refused to sell the horse. I told the owner, and the owner said, okay, we'll use him as a pony horse. And so they went back and they put a Western saddle on him, and he became one of the best pony horses that you ever want to meet. He loved taking other horses out to the track. It was a beautiful thing. Well, anyway, just another experience that I'm talking about. But we're going to get back to Anna here. And she's got this amazing story of a leopard. And then we're going to get into hopefully some time for questions and answers. People ask some really great questions about this issue. So let's see if I can pull this up real quick. I got kind of carried away with that story. And here's Anna.
Even after everything that I've experienced with Anna and spending all that time with her, there's that scientific controlled, sort of rational part of my brain still has doubts.
Okay, still has doubts, and I somehow clicked that off. So we're going to go back. I got to pull this up
everyone,
again.
And welcome to the
Got to pull that up. I'll be right there.
It's my pleasure to introduce you, Anna.
And after everything that I've experienced with Anna and spending all that time with her, there's that scientific controlled, sort of rational part of my brain still has doubts. So I wonder what it will take to totally convinced me. And then a unique opportunity presented itself. In the course of my work, I had come across the story of Jörg Olsen, an ex-policeman turned conservationist. Jörg and his wife Karen set up the Jukoni Predator Park. Here, many big cats rescued from bad zoos and canned hunting farms are offered a home and get lifetime care. Jörg has a remarkable relationship with his cats, and he handles them in a way I had seldom seen before. But there was one big cat here that he did not know what to do with. This black leopard, called Diablo, had been rescued from a European zoo where he'd been abused. That experience had made him suspicious and vicious. All he did was sit in his night shelter and snarl at anyone who came close to him. 6 months in, and Jörg was at a loss as to how to deal with this cat.
That whole atmosphere there was a vibe of aggression and of I hate you and I will kill you. And you know, the one encounter I had with him, he sent me to hospital 1 bite, 1 week.
Here, I thought, was the perfect case. If Anna could get this animal to change his behavior and become well adjusted, then I would have no choice but to acknowledge that she was in dialogue with animals. It took me some time, however, to convince Jörg to bring in Anna.
He's a dangerous cat. He's very, very dangerous. He's towards me and towards everybody else. In my opinion, the chances of an animal communicator changing that, it'll take a lot to convince me. I honestly do not believe that an animal can talk to a human or communicate with a human. I've had animals my whole life. We give them commands, we give them instructions, and they do it as we habituate them, basically. But I'm very skeptical to think that an animal like Diablo will communicate or can communicate with humans. I am desperate, however. I do not want to lose him.
I made sure that Anna had no information on Diablo or his history before she came to speak to the black leopard. I was nervous to see what would happen, as this animal never let anyone near his night shelter without a lot of snarling and growling. But the minute he saw Anna, he calmed down and let her kneel right outside and look at him. This beautiful black leopard that you've asked us to communicate with is very overawed by his new surroundings, having come from a very cramped and stressful place for him. That this place has been provided for him, but he's been quite conditioned by a very unfortunate past. He doesn't want much to do with humans as a result. He's immensely powerful, and I mean not just physically, which you well know and respect, but he's immensely powerful with wisdom and an energetic presence and personality that is far bigger than anyone has ever appreciated about him before. And he commands a certain amount of respect for that. Again, not in a needy way, but really just by virtue of who he is as a being. There's a very particular thing about his name, Diablo. He wants that name changed because he doesn't like the associations with it, the blackness, the darkness, the diabolical. And when asking him about his past before coming here, he shows concern for two young cubs that were next to him. He's asking what happened to them with a great sense of care and concern.
We actually forgot about that. When we went to fetch him, there was so much excitement about bringing him back here. It actually slipped my mind until she said, he asked about the two cubs, and then we remembered there were two little young leopard cubs next door to him that came from Rustenburg, and they were sort of semi-wild. They weren't hand-reared, and it just slipped my mind. And when they talked about it, I couldn't believe, I actually did believe it. I mean, then I really believed that they were communicating.
And when she communicated with him, and when we spoke to her and she relayed all the information back to us, firstly I didn't believe her. It's things that anybody can think out, and you can think, And then she said something about the cubs that were with him. And that changed this whole thing, because now all of a sudden, that's something that she didn't know about.
And I've also reassured him that you have no demands of him here, that you're quite happy to not make any physical demands of him or any expectations for display or interaction, that you're really willing to let him be how he wants to be. And that's given him an enormous sense of relief. Yeah. And having told him that is for the first time made him actually genuinely interested in now exploring a bit further. Now that he feels that he's not being asked to come out more, he's genuinely interested in being relaxed enough to have a natural curiosity come out and to actually expand his horizons a bit.
And Yerch was just stunned when the black leopard walked out of his night shelter into the larger enclosure later in the afternoon. In the 6 months that the cat had been here, Yerch had never seen him out of the night shelter. He then decided to rename the leopard Spirit.
We told him that same afternoon that we're not going to call him Diablo anymore. And we understand and we agree with that, the diabolical side of it. That's not what he is to us. And we'd like to change his name to Spirit. As I walked to him, I thought, listen, he asked about the two young leopards. I thought, well, I'm here now. There's nobody else here. I'm not going to look like a fool if he ignores me. I'll tell him what happened to those leopards. And as I called him and I said Spirit, and he was looking at me, he was lying like that, I said, with regard to the two little leopards, I just want to assure you, I want to tell you that they're safe. And I couldn't help it. I just said to him, wow, you're beautiful. Oh, that's mooi. And he gave me that, oh. And I thought, what's happening here? And I said to him, you understand what I'm telling you if I say to you that you're the most stunning cat? Oh. And I spoke to him and he answered me about 19 times. And he just sat there and he was totally relaxed. It's the first time since we had him that I felt at ease with him. I felt that he was relaxed and he understood me. It was, to say that I don't know what it feels like for him. For me, it was the most amazing moment.
Later that afternoon, Anna came back to check up on Spirit and to see how he was doing.
I'm asking him now about how he experienced the communication from Yerch through the fence. And he said it's the first time that someone has directly expressed to him verbally appreciation for who he really is, not how they see him to be. And that really surprised him. It shows me an image of literally stopping in his tracks by surprise at that sense of just this wall of appreciation coming towards him. He is so relieved that nothing's being demanded of him here. He's just so relieved. It's like this weight is lifted from his shoulders. And when he was grunting back, he said he was saying thank you for the thank yous. So each thank you he was getting, he was saying thank you back. Is there
anything you'd like to say about that feedback?
I think we'll talk about this later. I promise. So we'll talk about this later. It's okay. Hold on.
Okay, we had a little interruption with the internet, so we're going to get back to that in a moment, and I will do that in just 1 second, as soon as I can get the internet going again.
It's two different animals. It's two totally different personalities. We had a snarling cat, angry at everything, upset about being here, hating humans, hating us for having him here, ready to kill in an instant. To this relaxed black leopard that's lying on top of his log in his shelter, is this attitude of, you recognize me for who I am now? And it's amazing to talk to him and get to talking and get him to talk back to us.
Yach and Karen attended Anna's workshop on animal communication and now use it regularly with all their animals.
He changed my whole life. And spirit and animal communication has taught me, when I work with mother lions, the reactions you get, the communication you get back, the feelings you get. Sometimes you get lions or Queenie, for instance, that's unhappy with something that happened. And I'm not sitting out there wondering what's wrong with her. She tells me, and I can correct it, and I can make her happy, because she is in my, I have to look after her. I've got to make her happy. It changed the whole family.
The opportunity for every individual on the planet to connect again with nature is right there on our doorstep. It's a matter of simply looking up into the sky to notice the clouds and wind direction, to pay attention to the sounds of the birds around, to feel what it's like to have bare feet on the earth, and to notice with our own bodies and our five senses what's going on around us. And that will result in us developing a more intuitive and natural way of knowing how to treat our environment. It's not supernatural. It is supernatural, as in very natural. It's the blueprint of our brains. These ways of knowing and communicating were the way of all our human ancestors. We see how our children come alive when they are out in nature. And as adults, we must remember that we are living in a world borrowed from our children's future. This is a most delicate time in human history on the planet. And for sure the future of the planet and all her inhabitants rely on what we do now and what choices we make. Those choices can be informed by what the animals are telling us if we are just willing to listen and to hear. Perhaps the only real question for us humans is how are we going to respond?
Stay in contact with her now. tonight or tomorrow. How can we learn as humans to be connected with people? They help us to heal or something, to grow.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, and the matter of this kind of intuitive connection between people, human to human, is a question that I often get asked. With the animals, with the natural kingdom, there's not really considerations for things like what we might call permission or agreement, because the animals are their own selves, and if we wish to connect, they either will connect with us or they won't. There'll either be a sense of agreement and arising to that or not, and that would be their authentic truth. When it comes to humans, though, it's a little more tricky, because all humans, whether shamans or healers or ordinary walking around in the world kinds of folks, all of us are very occupied in our five senses and with our conscious minds every day. And yes, we are intuitively connected already, we just don't really know about it consciously because we're so busy with other kinds of thoughts. Connection or intuitive connection is often automatically there with people who are already emotionally close, or with people with whom you've had a very strong bond or mutual purpose.
Okay, and I know you want to listen to more of that. So I really didn't finish it, did I? I'm going to have to do that tomorrow on the Investigative Journal. So come back and listen to Anna tell us a little bit about telepathic communication between individuals, between the human race. Back tomorrow on the Investigative Journal.
The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening.